Welcome to another episode of Lamp Talk, a podcast where we discuss everything from lighting philosophy and technology to set politics and the business of owning lighting gear. I'm your host, Mac from Macam. For over 3 decades, I have had the honor of working closely with some of the best gaffers and manufacturers in Hollywood. We got a great show for you today. We have Michael Ambrose here, who's a good friend and a very talented gaffer. Been on top of his game for over 25 years on some major projects, Captain America, Winter Soldier, more recently Ford versus Ferrari, Black Panther, Ghostbusters 2. Mike's going to share some of his knowledge, go through some of the setups that he's encountered in his career. It's a really interesting conversation. I hope you guys enjoy it.
The interest and the fascination with light and moving pictures goes back as far as I can remember. Maybe I'd want to be a stunt performer. You know, I like doing like the fake fight scenes and falling and stuff like that. I thought maybe I'd go in that direction. But I ended up really realizing that I had a passion for behind the scenes. And I love the idea that if you didn't notice me, that I did my job.
Right.
And that it was more of the unsung hero kind of thing, you know. 8th grade, I started getting involved with theater and with hanging lights and being involved with productions and shows. And by the time I got to high school, I realized that there was actually a job called the lighting designer.
Wow.
And I saw a book on that. I asked the director if I could borrow it. I took it home, opened it up. The first page said, lighting design. There are no rules. Just spoke to me. And from there, it was a series of events that I just kept on being involved with entertainment and with live performance, with theater, with music, with corporate events, and then eventually into commercials and independent films, and getting in the union and working on small productions, and then ending up on some of the biggest sets in the world. I just count my blessings.
So you're interested also in stunts, which really is quite interesting how you gravitated to doing a lot of action unit stuff. And for people that don't understand that, what is the action unit and how did it come about?
It's a great question. And it was funny because I did find myself in these action units and working very closely with some of the best in the world stunt teams. And it didn't even occur to me until one day I was on set working with the stunt performers, and I suddenly had the memory and remembered how much I wanted to be a stuntman way back in high school. And I had forgotten about it. And I was like, wow, this is fun how I'm still like part of this.
Right, it's interesting.
And learn so much about it. But to answer your question, being a lighting designer, I really enjoyed telling stories with light and being part of that. As a lighting designer in theater, you are more like the cinematographer in film. You have a relationship with the director, and you have the conversations in prep about how the lighting is going to support the story, and you're involved with that. When I moved to film, I realized I had to relinquish some of that to the cinematographer. That I could collaborate with the cinematographer, but really he was the lighting designer and I was supporting that. So I kind of had to like figure that out, as far as what my passions were with lighting and how I was going to make that work in this new industry, which was fascinating. And I liked doing first unit and being right there telling the story with light. But opportunity comes in different ways and often unexpected. And I befriended some people that were very involved with major motion pictures, with Marvel, with Fast and Furious franchise, that were doing second unit, action unit. And these were enormous, big units. They had more people on their call sheets than the first unit.
Wow.
Did, because there was so many cameras. There was 10 or 11 cameras, so there's a full.
And when did this come up? Was this
crew.
like Captain America or like early days of Marvel?
Yeah, Captain America, Winter Soldier was really my first time with that group of people. Igor Meglic is the cinematographer that I was introduced to, and he needed a good gaffer that had some experience and wasn't afraid to take on some of the challenges, the logistical challenges of these enormous sets. And I was like, I'm game, man. Let's figure it out. And it was eye-opening. I had no idea, how involved in how big and how challenging, second unit could be. And I really enjoyed that experience. I learned so much. I learned so much about the stunt side. I learned so much about the action unit directing. Spiro Rosales, who's famous for many, many films and directing action units, is a creative genius when it comes to figuring out how to tell stories through action photography. And working with him and Igor and the rest of the team, it's a family of people that have stuck together a long time, filmmakers that have been making these amazing, unbelievable sequences for film for a long time. And I felt really honored to be part of it. And I learned so much from those guys.
And it seems like you're kind of pioneering a new job title. When did Action Unit start? I mean, I haven't really seen those credits before. Is it something that you guys changed, or was there somebody before you that did it? And
I'm not really sure.
yeah, it's interesting because it was always second unit, and you kind of just categorize, Action Unit, but now it's a thing of its own.
So I think historically in film, second unit was kind of the bastard stepchildren of the film making community. You would bring in the second unit guy. This goes way back from what I've been told. That the studio had the second unit cinematographer, like he had his office on the lot, and the film would be in production at the studio, and assistant directors would compile a list of things that were needed, kind of, connecting tissue for telling the story. And you would send this list over to the cinematographer, and then, a schedule would be figured out, and he'd come over with his team and start shooting either on previous sets or on sides, small insert stages. And, you'd have the close-ups of walking, getting into the car, or, the hand on the stick shift, or the hand on the doorknob. And sometimes you would maybe go on location, get an establishing shot that they didn't have time to do, and things like that. Well, all very necessary in storytelling and for editing. Not very exciting for, a cinematographer or a gaffer like myself that wants to tell stories.
Right.
Certainly show up every day and embrace what the job is and put our all into it. But as far as feeding the passion and the soul, you want to be involved.
You want to graduate, you might want to start there. It's a great opportunity.
Sure. Yeah, and it's okay for somebody to say, that's my career, I'm going to just do that. And I want that to be my specialty. There's no problem, what works for you. But for me, I want to be more involved.
Right.
I want more of a challenge.
Well, Action Unit seems like a huge challenge. I've seen this.
I don't know who
setups.
started saying Action Unit, but I think that somebody in the world of Action Unit wanted to differentiate between that old style of what second unit was. And, nowadays we also have splinter units. So, sometimes there's a splinter unit, which is just an offshoot of the first unit that goes off to maybe a stage that we just finished working on, and they get some pickup shots, and that's almost more like the old second unit.
Right.
Action Unit is its own entity. We have our own assistant director. We have our own producers and line producers and production managers, sometimes an entire second unit or Action Unit office of production coordinators. There's so much to do. It becomes its own entity unto itself. On some of the Fast and Furious movies, those production offices are opened not long before, not long after, and sometimes before the main unit production.
Oh, bad. There's a lot of prep that have to be done with the stunt coordination and locations and what have you.
Absolutely. On Fast and Furious 8, we were shooting main unit. I was the first unit gaffer on that, and we were shooting in Atlanta and in Cuba. And he was shooting in New York, Cleveland, and Iceland. The Iceland part alone, I think they were 2 or 3 months in Iceland shooting those sequences for the third act.
Wow.
They're a completely autonomous unit. They're doing their own stuff. We're like shooting the actors and the dramatic scenes, and it's all going to tie in, and we're all coordinating, but it's two separate companies completely working autonomously of each other.
What a collaboration.
It's a huge collaboration, yeah. And logistically, it's an enormous and very expensive endeavor. And franchises like Fast and Furious, which people either love it or they hate it, but either way, it brings box office. It does billions of dollars of gross box office every movie. worldwide. So, it's an economic engine for the studio. It's an economic engine for us as filmmakers to be able to come up with ideas and say, what can we imagine next and how are we going to do it? And we have the support to do it because of that economic engine of it.
You must work alongside some really talented key grips in that environment, I imagine.
Sure do. Key grip Peter Crimes, who I've known for many, many years, has been Igor's key grip for a long time, decades. They've been friends. And Peter's who introduced me to Igor in the first place. And he has an entire specialized crew and equipment base that is really designed for action unit. And I've seen the most amazing camera rigs attached to cars, attached to descender rigs, attached to ships, rigged in stages, things that are just so outside the normal convention of filmmaking. And every day for him is a fun adventure, a new problem to solve. And I have nothing but the highest respect for what those guys come up with. It's amazing.
Just the safety alone that they have to worry about, it's an enormous amount of pressure to get the ambitions done, but make sure it's being done in a very safe way, because there's a lot of things that can go wrong, obviously.
Absolutely. And we're dealing with, a lot of times, high-speed automobiles doing flips in the air and crashing into each other and catching on fire and blowing up, with making sure that camera operators are safe. This is a coordinated effort between the stunt team, the special effects team, and the grip team that makes sure that it all comes together and that everybody is safe.
Yes, and congratulations to you and your team on your safety record. It's amazing. But changing gears a little bit, I think people want to know about your Fast and Furious 9 that you just wrapped up. Can you tell us a little bit about that and maybe take us through your thoughts on how it all came together?
So for Fast and Furious 9, we were shooting in Los Angeles. Most of the movie was shot in the UK, but a lot of the story takes place in Los Angeles, especially the flashback scenes, which go back earlier in the franchise to before even the first one, which is kind of exciting for the fans. I'm not going to go too much into that because story points, and that'll be revealed when we go to the theater again when it's released. So we were in Los Angeles doing flashback segments and lighting up over the Los Angeles River using lots of equipment. And Igor wanted to really take the approach of it being a little grittier because it's supposed to be the 90s, and it's supposed to be the lighting in urban areas of America was a lot different in the 90s than it is now. We've now retrofitted and changed a lot of street lighting to LED, and it's changed the color of urban light at night. It's not something that necessarily your average citizen even notices, but me as a lighting guy, I notice the difference between what was a high pressure sodium orange kind of color urban look to cities to now being much brighter, full spectrum, higher color temperature type of LED environment in city lighting that's much different today than it was then. So going back and doing these flashback scenes, we wanted it to feel like it would have in the 90s. And we used lots of equipment, making pools of light to make it seem more natural. And
Well, instead of using large sources like 18Ks and just bringing up the ambience of the whole area, you actually are using smaller fixtures. Is that what you're saying?
that's right, exactly. And we use smaller fixtures and more of them and spread out over a larger area to cover the areas that we had to shoot. When we do these sequences, the cars have to be up at speed and running for some time. So it's common. We still break it up into sections, but we have to shoot a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, sometimes even as much as a mile. And that all needs to be lit up and look good on camera. And it's a big undertaking, requires a lot of equipment and a lot of planning, and you can't get on the street until the rush hour's over, and then you got to be ready to shoot when cameras are ready to roll. And there's a lot going on. It's pretty fun. But getting back to kind of how do we approach, and how has Igor approached lighting for night exteriors, and not just putting up a big backlight and saying, okay, we're good to go. Because I mean, it looks great. You can put a Condor up in the air and put an 18K up there and backlight everything and have some headlights play, and it looks great. It is a nice look. But it's been done so often. Producers love it because it's like, oh, there's one Condor and there's a backlight and you're good to go. And then you have another, you turn around and you either move it or you have another one, you turn it on and you're good to go in the other direction. But we wanted to have a little different aesthetic in these movies. And I don't know if I mentioned earlier, if it came through, but for Fast and Furious 9, we were shooting on film. The flashback sequences, the director and first unit DP Steve Winden decided that they wanted for the aesthetic to have the feeling of the flashback and to have the feeling of the 90s to shoot on film, which was a really fun experience for us to go back and use the film cameras again and rely on our meters and not on monitors to tell us what our exposures were. And but as far as approach to lighting at night and working with Igor, who has an incredible eye, we had the opportunity on Black Panther to go to Busan, South Korea, and do some night exterior car chase scenes there. And there's a bridge, a famous bridge that's all lit up at night in Busan. And that bridge is about a mile long. It's a suspension bridge. It's absolutely amazing. They have all kinds of LED lights on it that do flash and they can program stuff. And we utilized all that. But we noticed that if you're setting up and doing action scenes on the roadway of the bridge itself, the bridge was really designed to be lit and viewed from the beach about a mile away. And so you would look at the bridge from a distance and it has this whole kind of a presentation to it that was lit from the outside. But when you're on the roadway itself, it's pretty pedestrian. It wasn't too exciting. And Igor wanted more specular highlights and more action to help sell the speed as the cars were going by. So we decided, and Igor came up with the great idea of putting 8-foot quasar tubes every 50 feet for the entire run of the bridge on both sides on the railings. And it was super simple. We just zip tied them on there and put them every 50 feet for the better part of a mile. We had a crew of like 15 or 20 guys out there for like a week putting these up. We powered it with putt-putt generators. I have a picture somewhere of like this trailer that has like 50 putt-putt generators on it, and that was going out to be deployed. It's a double-decker bridge, so the top layer goes in one direction, and the bottom layer goes in another direction. So we're up on the top level, and we could put it was great though, because we could put the generators and stuff all down underneath on the second level, run the cable. Meanwhile, up on the top, I can't remember how many, there must have been 700 or 800 8-foot quasar tubes that were attached on 50-foot centers, and it made all the difference in the world. Those quasar tubes are seen in the sequences when you're looking at the cars going across the bridge and you just see those flashes of light, that specular highlight like flashing by as they drive by. And they were bright enough that they would actually, if you're shooting inside the car, you saw the effect of them actually on the actors inside. So it was very effective. And I think it just added so much to the end result of that sequence.
So, what are some of the smaller units that you're using for these pools of lights? Are they still HMIs, or are there a combination of HMIs and LEDs?
Combination of HMIs and LEDs. One thing that Mike introduced me to the Solaframe moving lights, which are LED based. And I've started using the moving lights on every Condor rig. Even if I don't know what their application will be for each location, I just put them there because they're so versatile. I can point the light, I can rotate a gobo, I can change a color, I can increase intensity, I can zoom out, I can soften the focus, all from the remote, from my console programmer. And it's incredibly fast and very effective. There's a little building that's dark, we can just kind of point a light over at it, give it a certain kind of aesthetic, a little bit of texture, and solve a problem in seconds.
Very quickly.
Yeah, minutes. As opposed to, all right, let's drag a light over to the rooftop across the way and point it. It's enormously cost saving. And these are all LED fixtures, which are amazing. Instead of putting like Arri Maxes or 20Ks or big head fixtures, I've started using a lot of the M40s from Arri and enjoying using those for night exteriors. Yeah, sometimes we have to gel them, but it's just such a versatile unit. and you
Mm.
get plenty of punch out of it, and found that to be very effective on Fast and Furious. It was very effective on Ford versus Ferrari when we were lighting night racetrack scenes in Georgia for that movie. I was using three M40s on the top rail of the Condor basket with large chimeras on them to soften them, so they just made kind of a nice soft pool of light. And you would think, well, three M40s through a large chimera, that's not a pool of light. But when we were
Mm.
spacing condors out by 500 yards apiece, and then that would become a pool of light comparatively to where the next pool of light would be.
Right.
But it would be a soft overall pool, a very soft, big pool of light, which worked with the atmosphere and the smoke and the rain and the night. And in Ford versus Ferrari, the back when they did Le Mans in 1966 at night racing, there was no light on the back sides of the track where they were going through the countryside, and there wasn't any light. We looked at reference footage. There wasn't any because there was no light and it was dark. So we really wanted to keep the aesthetic of the headlights being pretty much the only thing. Now, we also needed to light up around the environment so that we could see cinematically. It made sense, but we wanted to
Right.
keep Fade and Papa Michael and Igor and Mike Bauman, who was gaffing first unit, and myself. We all talked about this and trying to come up with concepts that were going to work and still keep the feeling of 1966 night racing in France and what that felt like. And I think that we were extremely successful in pulling off that aesthetic
Oh
story.
yes, it's done extremely well. It's there's been a lot of praise for it. So kudos. What are some of the fixtures that you used on that for
That
car
Yeah,
side interiors?
that was the same kind of a setup. It was M40s and the solar frame moving lights underneath,
Oh,
and that was
awesome.
it. And things like small LED units on the ground to uplight. And I mean, I would use like consumer grade Philips PAR 38 equivalents in just little cans and put them around to uplight like signs and things like that. I had hundreds of them, and we would just spread those out, along the track where we just needed little, highlights and so forth. Sometimes we
Right.
would just go out because we were shooting in Savannah or outside of Savannah and the peanut fields in rural areas. And Igor would say, "There's just nothing back there. I want to have some specular sources, like there's a farm lights on or something like way off." So we would send a gator with a crew and a putt putt generator out with like five lights. Sometimes we would use tweenies. Sometimes we would use LED lights. Sometimes we'd use those PAR 38s with just some LED PAR 38s in them. And we would go a mile and a half away from where we're shooting and just put up on a baby stand in the middle of a peanut field, four or five lights and point them right towards the track, towards lens. And you would just see them as little specks of light in the distance. Hardly, very subtle, something you would never
Very
really
subtle.
notice as being anything other than light that's coming from some sort of civilization in the background.
Yeah, it sounds like it's much more challenging to use a lot of different sources than just one big source. I guess there's a lot of finesse to
A
that.
lot of finesse.
To
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of lighting finesse. Take a look at that. So I saw there's a picture here looking at. We'll pop that up. Um, it looks like a car shot scene from Ford versus Ferrari. It looks like you got some cream sources there. Could you take us through that setup?
When we were doing, and I think Mike Bauman utilized the same thing because he did a lot more of the actors' performances than I did. But we did a little bit with Matt Damon on Mulholland Drive, and I think maybe the pictures you're looking at are that. I use the cream source Doppios and the cream source minis oftentimes for driving scenes. They're a great LED source, bicolor. Now, Cream Source has developed full color for a lot of their line, which is awesome. But they're just very well designed. They're rugged, they're reliable, and they're low power because it's LED. And I'm able to put these on car rigs when we're shooting actors and soften the light and still have enough punch to balance it to daytime and get a really nice natural result on the actor's face.
Yeah, and you're using because of all these LEDs that you're utilizing, using a lot less power. It's probably easier for you to rig them, quicker to move around,
Absolutely. I mean,
and adjust color.
one problem we have is if we're not using an insert car that has a generator built into it, with action photography, the process car is moving along pretty fast and rocking and rolling a little bit. So if you put a putt putt generator attach it to the rig and use that to power, oftentimes the fuel starts sloshing around, and then it starves the carburetor, and then it stalls. So right in the middle of your scene, the light goes out, which is very annoying and happens often. So this upsets a lot of people, actors,
Sure.
producers, cinematographers, myself, to name a few. We needed to come up with solutions for that. And when we were using things other than LED lights, it was hard to use battery systems because the lights were just drawing so much power. You'd have to swap out the battery systems pretty regularly. Now, with LED technology, we can put battery packs on and use inverters and have reliable power source that can handle the rough and tumble life of action photography for hours at a time. And we don't need to change out the batteries nearly as often. And oftentimes
Right.
we can get through the sequence. Like, if you got Matt Damon, for example, coming out and he's going to work with the action unit for the day or for a part of the day, we may only get him for a couple of hours. Well, we need to make
Mm,
sure that everything works for that time because, pretty soon the producer on the first unit is going to call and say, okay, we need Matt back. It's time for him to do a scene. And if we didn't get what we were supposed to get in the time allotted, then it's tough. We have to pick it up another time. Well, I don't want that falling on me and my team. And I know that cinematographer doesn't want that falling on him and his team. If that happens because of others, then that's somebody else's problem.
right.
But let's make sure it doesn't fall on us. Let's do everything we can to be prepared and ready. And that's what we do.
Wow. So you do use batteries on some of your car rigs. Is that correct? I heard you say that,
That's right.
or generators, obviously. So, and the batteries, are you using cinema type batteries, or are they just 12-volt batteries, and you're just going to an inverter and uh,
Exactly. We developed a thing, and I know that there's companies out there that have made awesome battery packs for this kind of use, and we've used those sometimes. But most of the time, we've been very successful in doing. My team has come up with a thing we call the crash pack, and it's built in some milk crates. And there's a couple of 12-volt marine batteries that are in series that are in the milk crate with an inverter attached and a charger attached. So while we're setting up and everything, that thing's just always staying topped off. And then we
Mhm.
pull the stinger right before we shoot, and the inverter provides the constant power we need for the lights, and we've been very successful with that.
Yeah, that's interesting because LEDs are DC and you can run them straight DC to DC, but the problem is that the DC voltage is so different on many of these different fixtures. There's 12 volt, there's some of them that are 48 volt, like the sky panels. So the voltage fluctuates. It's much easier to just use its own converter to 120 and use an inverter, and you're more versatile and ready for everything,
I
essentially,
agree
right?
completely. Another great LED lighting fixture that I like using is the DMG Lumiere, and I've been using that to some great success. It's a very punchy, lightweight, small unit that is very soft and nice. It's a great unit. And when I first got a hold of it, I wanted to experiment with using battery packs attached to it. And we put the wrong battery pack on and we fried it.
Mm,
And it kind of a testament to what you're
right.
talking about. It's like, just easier to use.
All these manufacturers are giving us 120, 240. They have to deliver that way,
Exactly.
and it's easier for us to convert power, and it's less expensive too.
Yeah,
Because you said you have 12-volt marine
sure.
batteries, so those are pretty inexpensive, and they're great batteries. It's smart to run them in series. You can 24 volt and then get a nice 24-volt inverter, which are very common.
Yeah, and
Uh,
it's a relatively inexpensive way to provide constant power, reliable power. That said, sometimes there's a battery pack attached to the light. Makes sense. On my Instagram feed, there's a picture of we're doing a BMW commercial on the Big Island, and I have a whirly gag with two, I guess they were S30s on there. And we attached the battery packs to them, and then we were just doing, the spinning gag. So it looks like, and they're doing close-ups on the gear shift. It looks like, like there's a little bit of interactive light going by. And in that case, that worked perfectly because we needed a small power source to last for a little while right on the light.
mm,
And we could keep just spinning around without having to run a cable to it. And then, and we've all done the poor man process where we have to spin it around and then spin it the other way and reset it. And so sometimes it makes
Sometimes it's
sense to put a
expensive.
light right onto putting a battery right on the light.
And more likely than not, it's gonna be one of those, like, camera batteries, 14 volt.
Exactly. And, those are expensive. I mean, I've priced them. I don't know, you're in the retail business,
Yeah.
you know.
The least expensive ones I think that we offer are close to
Yeah,
$400. 12 volt is definitely if you have the space, but like you said, if you're running and gunning and you have a fixture that needs to be mobile, then you're gonna have to use
yeah,
those type of batteries, those are the standard ones. Lightyear and Quasar has some really inexpensive solutions as
yep,
well. If you need to go DC for car rigs and big stuff like where you're pulling, that 1200 watts or more, then the AC sine wave
yeah.
inverters is probably the way to go, right?
I've had great success again with the DMG Lumiere, which has essentially about a 2-foot fixture and has little handles. So if you're doing like a walk and talk and it's soft, you put the bag on it and you can put the battery right on the back, camera battery on the back, and you can just walk with it, right? And you're just walking with it, and there's handles and it's lightweight and it works great. And if it's a night scene, you're turning it down to seriously zero point 0.5. You're barely using any of the potential of the light. For things like that, the camera battery works great. So I like to carry all of those options because depending on what comes up and what the cinematographer needs, we want to be ready for anything.
So you got to have all those tricks in your tool
That's
bag.
right.
So, wow. So switching gears a little bit, getting a little bit more fun. Rumor is you just got off of Ghostbusters. Is that true?
Finished Ghostbusters. It's funny because we've been in lockdown and the industry has been shut down now for going on 3 months. So it's funny when you say just got off.
Yeah.
It is one of the more recent productions, but I feel like anything that we've shot seems like a long time ago at this point. And we're very anxious to get back to work. I feel like the public has seen all of the content that they want to see, and it's time for us to get back to work and make more so that people
Yeah.
can have content again, fresh, new, interesting content.
Yeah, there's a white paper that was just released, so it's a lot of positive news seeming to start here for us.
Yes, and I'm just waiting for somebody to give a call. And any of you cinematographers out there, I'm standing by, waiting for your phone call, ready and willing to come light with much eagerness, as well as I think everybody else in the industry. We are ready to put our passionate filmmaker thinking caps on and go back to set. With our masks, of course. So, yeah, Ghostbusters. What a great experience that was. It was supposed to be, I think was supposed to be released last month or this month or something. It was supposed to come out right now, and we could talk all about it, and I could show pictures and I could put stuff on my Instagram feed, but I can't do any of that because it's so exciting because it came out so well. It was my first collaboration with cinematographer Eric Steelberg. I just enjoyed working with him so much. He has a great eye and a great temperament and just a wonderful collaborator. And we really got along so well. And he had the long time relationship with director Jason Reitman, son of the original director of the 1984 version, and Ivan Reitman, his dad. It was just another one of those pinch me moments in my career where it's like, I can't believe I'm here doing this with these people and kind of approaching this very sacred ground of Ghostbusters. What a great experience. But we shot up in Alberta, in Calgary. The story is a continuation of the original story. It's 2020, so it's this many years later since 1984, and it continues with the story with the grandchildren who go back and find the original car and the proton packs and all of the props and find out what happened to them and where are they now and what's going on, and it just continues the story. And there'll be some really fun surprises that come up that I can't talk about that we'll have to wait now, I guess, till next summer to be released. We had a lot of lighting. We did a lot of lighting effects, as you could imagine in a movie like Ghostbusters. There's a lot of interactive lighting, coordinating with the special effects, the visual effects. What a great job. And I think it came out great. The trailer came out months ago and looked wonderful, got us all very excited. And I'm sure that everybody will be very pleased with the outcome of this.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing that. And what a big difference approach in lighting. You have to be very versatile. Here you are the main gaffer, and this is not an action unit. And you have more
A lot of
flicker
flicker
effects, like you
effects,
said.
all kinds of flash and trash, as I like to call it. It reminded me of the rock and roll days. And I tell you, I couldn't have done it without my console programmer, Benoit Richard, who has been with me now for a number of projects. There's just such a shorthand with him. And because he's a rock and roll lighting designer, his speed of programming and his grasp of how to manipulate lighting in the flash and trash mode is absolutely uncanny and saves all kinds of time. And to be able to repeat cues and keep things consistent and work with color, work with a cinematographer and a director that's creating on the fly sometimes, and we have to come up with stuff, and everybody just came together in such a great way, and it was very effective. So, hats off once again to Benoit Richard. Couldn't have done it without him.
He's your
That's
lighting
right.
caddy.
Console programmer, which I think in today's COVID-19 world, using lights like the solar frame lights and having a console programmer is going to be more important than ever, just because the more hands-off lighting that we can do and the more adjustments we can make to lights without having to physically go in and touch stuff
Creativity,
is going to work very nicely in this new world in which we are going to have to figure out how to make movies. I think it's going to come in handy using the
That's right.
technology to our advantage.
Yep. Yeah, it looks like we're headed in the right direction. The governor announced, I think we had a white paper yesterday on how we can get back to work.
And I've been watching for the governor's announcement on that, and I haven't seen it. The white paper came out, which was the safety protocols, which
Right.
was a collaborated effort between the guilds, and that was released to the governor. And now we're waiting for the state to give the thumbs up. I don't know if you've seen a headline that says that it's happened. It could happen while we're recording this. It could happen.
Yeah, right. So anyways, good news on that front. Mike, I can't thank you enough for joining us.
Well, my pleasure, and thank you so much for having me, and really appreciate the opportunity to get out and talk about filmmaking with you and with the audience. And I would like to say that if anybody ever, there's a lot of up and coming filmmakers out there that obviously they're interested in what we have to say and what we're doing and the projects we're doing, because we're the ones that are very fortunate and blessed to be on some of the sets that we're on. And I always appreciate and am grateful for the projects that I get to be involved with. But I like to invite any young and up and coming filmmakers, even established filmmakers that, are interested in what we're doing, to please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always accessible. I have a very accessible Instagram profile. It's easy to find me, and direct message me, ask a question. If there's something that came up in this podcast and you have a question for me, please send it through. I answer everything. And I just invite you to feel free to approach me at any time.
And a scholar, true gentleman and a scholar.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Please keep the mic. We're going to try to get you on again very soon, as soon as you have the time again.
Cool.
Thanks again, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you for joining us today, and please don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Macam Inc. or visit our website at www.macam.tv. I'm Mac from Macam, where it's easy and delightful to spend your money on the latest technology.